Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. So I'm uploading a podcast that I did with the channel 434 quite a while back. Some of you may have already heard this if you follow 434, but I put some visuals on the video anyway, so if you have already seen it, there is some trippy stuff to look at. And for those of you who haven't, I hope you enjoy this conversation. I found it very interesting. Peter, the guy who runs 434, is a fellow Machine Elf channeler, and so I thought it was fascinating the things that we had in common and how similar the information was that we had received from our sessions of channeling Machine Elves. But real quickly, I wanted to apologize for the audio quality on my end in this video. I am hopefully going to be starting a podcast on TripWhip very soon, and I promise you for when I do that, it's definitely going to be a much higher audio resolution on my half. But also, I've put some new designs up on my merch store, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys check that out and even purchased a shirt. Anything you buy on that merch store will just directly support me in this channel, so that'd be greatly appreciated, especially as this channel has now been demonetized. And of course, I want to thank you patrons. The money you give is very helpful, but also the fact that you're willing to contribute something to this channel in the way that you are is extremely motivating for me. So thank you so much. And of course, Peter Wersland, thank you for your massive donation. It is genuinely helpful. If any of you guys are thinking about supporting this channel via Patreon, I have left a link to it in the description. And I have lots of tier benefits on there as well so that you guys can get something out of it too. But anyway, on to the video. Sit back guys, relax, enjoy the visuals and the conversation, and thank you for watching.
I am really glad that you wanted to do this. I found your videos, I think, through someone, because someone sent me, they said, oh, he's talking about you. I was like, oh, who's talking about me? And I checked your videos. I think it was, which one was it? About...
Yeah, if it mentioned you, it would have been the Law of Attraction video. The Machine Elves reveal how the Law of Attraction works, something like that.
So that was a really nice synchronicity. So let's talk about... But yeah, first... can you say something about yourself? Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, so my name's Jack. I run the channel TripWhip, where basically it started off talking about psychedelics or my psychedelic use in general, but I made a video early on when I opened up the channel talking about basically Machine Elves and like channeling Machine Elves. And I actually made the video because I figured nobody except people who had seen or heard of Terence McKenna Machine Elves would watch it, so because it was pretty out there. So I didn't want too many people to see it, but I guess a lot of people were curious about what Machine Elves are. So I think it's my most viewed video. And so after that, I realized people kind of had a little bit of interest in these beings, and so I started talking about more about the entities I come into contact with on psychedelics as well. So that's more or less the channel I run. It's kind of entity contact, spirituality in a sense, and psychedelics.
Yeah, how long have you been in contact with Machine Elves?
Not particularly long. I mean, the Machine Elves are a funny thing because the way it's worked for me is that it revealed that the Machine Elves had always been with me all my life, but I only became aware of them when I took a high dose of LSD, which would have been only a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because you've been in contact with these entities for a very long time, if I remember.
No, it's actually only around the same time, so August 2015. That would make it more than 4 years. So, but for me, it's just mushrooms. So you mentioned LSD. I know you also tried DMT. What substances do you use to get in contact with them?
So it was LSD that kind of opened the door to these beings. But once the door was opened, it was basically any substance or any psychedelic. Even weed. Like I think once I stopped smoking weed often and just started having it rarely, treating it like how I treat the other psychedelics with a little bit more respect and just having it a lot less frequently, then the experiences on weed became psychedelic and started taking me to the same place where the Machine Elves reside.
And
so
that's
really
one of the reasons why I really connected with everything you say in your videos. I can relate it because the same happened to me, and it's something that people a lot of negative feedback I get about this. I mentioned this in one of my first videos, and to this day I get comments. People say, "Oh, what are you talking about? You cannot get in contact with anything on weed." And I want to make a video about this because it's I have a theory that your body is basically a filter, and you switch off this filter by using different substances. And I mean, everybody, people don't believe, everybody can laugh, but it happened to me once when I was drunk. So I believe it basically, whatever you use, it switches off your, this filtering mechanism, and then your spirit or consciousness just leaves your body. Alcohol was just once. So it's not something you can get. It wasn't anything. I just saw them. It wasn't like I get in contact. But weed for me, it's sometimes it's the same as mushrooms. I basically get in contact with them. We talk. It's a normal psychedelic substance for me now, and it's really surprising. It's also a certain types of strain. It's not all types of weed. It's just there's a few strains do that for me. But what's your experience with this?
Similar. I think, I get the same sort of feedback as well. I released a video where I filmed myself basically smoking weed with the intention of meeting the Machine Elves, and I never done it at that point, and I was, I guess, extremely lucky because I got it. I captured it on film the first time meeting the Machine Elves on weed, and obviously I posted the video, and generally the feedback was either it was what did you take? They thought I was joking when I said weed, so that I didn't get demonetized, or they were just saying I was full of BS. But no, it's true, and a lot of people are talking about actually having profound spiritual experiences when they're sober, and I know it's possible. I work at a float center. And so, I use sensory deprivation tanks quite often, and you can get very profound experiences in there, in the tank. And so it seems like, for me, psychedelics have always been the most powerful trigger to turn this filter off. Because I agree, I think we have this filter activated in our head, so that we only have to digest very, I guess you'd say, practical information, information that pertains to keeping our body alive. And then all the other information is out there and we have access to it. But, it's just so overwhelming that we kind of become paralyzed in order to process it, and it just doesn't really serve our body too well. But when we take these psychedelics, it gives us this time slot, how long the drug lasts. This is how long you can enter the unfiltered reality, and this is where the Machine Elves reside for some reason. I have made a video where I talked about where I think this information comes from, and how we're connected to all of this. Personally, I think it's something to do with starlight that came forth in one of my trips. It was actually the one where I was talking about where I smoked the weed. Live.
I think I watched it. I watched some of your videos, not all of them. But that's most of the things you say I agree with. And I wanted to ask you, what is your theory? Because it seems you already have a theory on what those entities are.
See, this is something I go back and forth with. Because I have a large audience of skeptics, I like to say that what they are is our interpretation of this unfiltered information. So, the way we experience our sober reality is through basically processing our environment as things, or as people, or as entities and individuals. And this is how our brain has been programmed to survive throughout evolution. But and it's also a product of the ego, I imagine. And so when we take psychedelics and we start experiencing this unfiltered reality, where we're just getting a whole stream of information which we've never been in touch with before, our ego, or our language-based mind, or our entity-assigning brain, or part of our brain, is still active. And so it assigns entities to this information. But That's what I would always say when people ask me what I think these entities are. But I think that's me kind of copping out as to what I really think they are. Because these entities are more, how would I say, they feel more genuine than any other person I've ever met, which is a very hard, it's a very hard thing to explain to people. But I don't think this is a delusion of the mind. And I don't, if it is my brain assigning, entities into this new information, there's a reason for it, because there is so much order in these experiences, so much perfect order that allows these experiences to be translated to my sober self as to understand them. That the fact that I am seeing entities is very important. I think there is a type of intelligence in this information. I genuinely think these beings are real. That's what I'm kind of getting to, and it's hard for me to admit that because a lot of people call me crazy for that.
Yeah, no, of course that's something that everyone has to go through who obviously talks about psychedelic messages. I gave up a long time ago. I even made a video recently, how to deal with quotation mark humans, and it's an amazing relief when you just stop trying to convince people. That's what I always say. Like, my channel 434 is basically for those who already know or who want to know more. I don't try to convince anyone. I don't try to explain anything. And it's because as soon as you connect with someone who has had the same experiences, they'll know what you're talking about. They'll be like, yes, of course it's real. It has to be real, because many of us get messages that cannot be accessed from this reality. Like in my case, it was talking to dead family members who told me things that I had no chance of knowing otherwise. But also, as you said, being there feels real, and it sometimes feels more real than being in this reality. And this feels like simulation sometimes. And those entities we talk to, they have knowledge about things that my brain couldn't. Like there's no way. I always say I'm not that smart. There's no way I could know those things. They use words that I don't know. I sometimes have to look them up, and I don't agree with them sometimes. That's the other thing, because they have ideas and concepts which are very universal, which are in strong opposition to what I believe in, and then I have to adjust my beliefs to what they say, because they're always right. Everything they say makes sense, and they're smarter than me. So they very often criticize me a lot. Like, they say the things that I believe in make no sense, and they explain why. And very often I just change my beliefs because someone shows me how ridiculous I am. Sometimes they tell me that I'm too radical in my beliefs, and there's a lot of stuff like the sexuality videos. That was a lot of negative feedback, because they explained to me a lot about sex that I didn't know, especially seeing it from the other female perspective. And there were things that I couldn't know, and they helped me a lot in my life. So they have to be real. It's just. And also, there's too many people who experience the same thing. And also, institutions now. I think the Kingston College in London, I don't remember who, but they engaged in, they created a separate department for mapping out the psychedelic world. So it's not a product of imagination if someone's actually spending money on trying to create a map of this world. So I believe that there's just too much proof. That it's real.
No, I agree. I mean, that's one of the arguments for this reality, that the sober reality that we're living in right now, is that people seem to be having a consistent experience. But then when people who are taking psychedelics try and share the similarities to people who haven't experienced it, it's constantly like, well, you're just interpreting what they've experienced to match yours. It's because that idea that the similarities are there is obviously extremely supportive of another reality.
It's for me the funniest one is when people say that it's a coincidence, and then you try to explain to them the mathematical odds of this being a coincidence, and it goes into such ridiculous numbers that it is impossible. Like synchronicity. Right. I don't know if you've you've seen the video that I made about the first one about synchronicity that happened to me with planes. One of them crashing. I mean, I worked for a company, and a plane of a company crashed on my birthday, and its flight number was 434. So my birthday is that of August, which is 3 and 8. And just recently, I found another flight that crashed, which flight number was 434, and there was something to do with it being delayed for 38 minutes, and the reason it crashed was related to this 38 minutes. Again, 3 and 8.
Oh wow!
It's crazy, and I want to make a video about matrix glitches, and a lot of it is related again to planes, and I don't know why. I don't understand it, but it's it's mathematically and logically impossible for all of this to be a coincidence, because people explain synchronicities in a way that you're looking for connections instead of seeing the connections. You basically just create it in your head. I always say it's just impossible. There's too many things happening that would make it an illusion. What's your take on synchronicity?
Well, it's funny. I've got like from you conveying to me your experience with synchronicities, I've got an interpretation of it based on what I believe synchronicities are. So for me, planes have always been the ultimate symbol of man can achieve whatever he wants. Because it's always that, like, whenever somebody's like, you can't do that, it's like, well, once upon a time we thought we never could fly, and now there are planes around. Like, that's the first thing that seems to pop into people's brains. So planes for me take the symbol of man can achieve what he wants. Synchronicities were revealed to me to be a pattern that is being shown to us. I like, by Machine Elves, it was one of my first videos I made, was talking about how Machine Elves were revealing to us synchronicities to make us aware of the connection between our belief systems, or I'm not sure if belief system is the right word, but it's our conscious mind and the way that our universe is being aligned. Because personally, I believe in the multiverse, and I think that the Machine Elves are somehow responsible for choosing which parallel universes are being placed together. And synchronicities are patterns that symbolize this positioning of universes. For instance, it's like, I made an example, a very bad example in one of my videos, but the example was like, imagine you're driving down the freeway, you turn on the radio, start listening to Led Zeppelin, and you concentrate on that song by Led Zeppelin, and it's your first time listening to it, and then all of a sudden a car pulls in front of you with the license plate, first time Led Zeppelin or something like that.
Or a bumper sticker.
Yeah, bumpers, something like that. And so it's like, well, if we live in a reality where, these universes are consistent, it's like, for that to have happened, this little coincidence is this whole separate reality where this guy is a big fan of Led Zeppelin, all of a sudden, puts this bumper sticker on his car, and he's driving on the freeway at this exact time, just to cause this coincidence for me. And so for me, that's what synchronicities represented, was this revealing of the fact that that our reality is essentially universes being placed together, different universes being placed together. So the fact that you're having these synchronicities with planes is funny, because it connects to the ultimate beautiful interpretation I got from this fact, which is that we can do anything we want, because there is a universe out there where you have everything you want, not just in material goods, but in the way you feel. And if you are thinking in the right ways, then you can literally attract that parallel universe into your reality. Something like that.
It's very interesting the way, because I listened to you explain it in your video about law of attraction, which, by the way, this was also a big synchronicity, because we made those videos at the same time without knowing about this, right? We made law of attraction videos about the same time, which is really crazy again. But it's funny, this example you used with Led Zeppelin, because it actually happened to me. Things like that happen to me all the time, and I feel I don't want to sound like I'm ego driven or anything, but I feel like I'm the first person who started asking people to talk about those synchronicities. At least I've never seen anyone do it on such a mass scale, because I talk to a lot of people and I have a huge folder of screenshots. People send me pictures and they tell me about their synchronicity stories, and they're crazy. They're absolutely crazy, and I've never heard anyone do that. So I started doing it, and I'm thinking about making a video about this, because I actually have proof that synchronicity is not some kind of a coincidence, especially in regards to 434, because people talk to me every day saying, as soon as I started watching your videos, as soon as we started talking or whatever, I started seeing 434, and everyone says it's the same thing. They always say they start seeing the clock at 4:34 p.m. or a.m. They start waking up at that time, and they start seeing the number around them. And one of the craziest stories I've ever heard was someone got in Uber, and the Uber driver asked the guy out of the blue if they have ever heard of my videos of 434. And the guy said, of course. I'm going now to my friends to do mushrooms. And he arrives at the house, and the house number is 434. And
wow.
this is crazy, because things like that happen to me too. And there's more people who experience the same thing. So, I mean, there's not much on synchronicity at the moment. That's why I'm trying to show people that this is what I was told actually by Machine Elves, that this is a call to action. This is for us, something that's supposed to make us realize that this is not just a physical reality, that it's more than that. There's a lot of things that they explain. I made a video about this. But let's talk maybe about the law of attraction, because we make those videos. You have a very good theory. Everything, by the way, everything you said, you mentioned that we're told different things, but when I listen to you, it turns out we're not. It's the same information, it's just different words, and it's different concepts. So they didn't tell me about law of attraction in the same way as they talked to you about this, and they didn't give me like a specific, it's not like The Secret, the book. It wasn't like that. They basically showed me things that made me realize that as you said, you believe in the multiverse theory, where you can basically have anything you want by choosing the present moment's direction. At least that's how I understand it. But it's very similar to what I was shown. It's basically that you create your reality by choosing your emotions. So tell me your take on law of attraction.
So I mean, when I said we were told different things, I didn't mean that we were told like contradicting information. It was more like, we were told it differently, because I remember watching a video and learning from it, and so it wasn't the same information I'd received from the elves. But so this kind of plays into synchronicities as well. I mean, a lot of the information from the Machine Elves pertains to this sort of stuff. But from the machine, I guess what I got from it was the fact that I compared it to the slit experiment, where they shot the electron through the double slit and measured where the electron landed on the screen, the fluorescent screen.
That's the observer's paradox experiment.
That's exactly the observer's paradox. And so when I was showing these visions from the Machine Elves, this was on the weed, on weed. I was seeing these flashing lights, which since I've come to definitely regard as representing the moments. At this point, when I was seeing it, I wasn't sure, and I felt like many people had seen these white lights, and I didn't. I felt like I'd seen it many times as well during this trip. And when I sobered up, I was like, "What the hell was I thinking? Like, I've never seen that before." But then, since then, I've had a few trips, and it keeps taking me back to this flashing white light, which to me represents the moment. Well, I was seeing these flashing lights being joined up together, and then I was seeing this force that I interpreted as time, weaving these different moments together. And then this was encapsulated inside this like weird, super advanced machine, which was projecting different emotions. And depending on what energy you were holding, the emotion that you were receiving from this machine would be different. And so what I interpreted it as was that wherever our perception is, or whatever our focus is, this chooses which moments are being pieced together. And so it's kind of like whichever, because you know about the slit experiment, yeah?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, yes, the very famous one. So it's like whatever you are observing, that particular universe comes into fruition, even though all these other potential realities are laying dormant in this realm of potentiality. And so that's how I interpreted this vision. I don't know if that made sense.
It does, and the reason why I like listening to other people who have contact with Machine Elves is that I've noticed a long time ago that these messages become more complete. So each of us have a different part of a message. I've noticed a long time ago, like when we compare notes, whether I do it with I don't know, Shaman Hog, Star Pilot, we always find that we get the same messages but different parts of the message. And what you've just said, I can complete that. You pick those different, because they're present moments. That's something you ever mentioned. Well, sorry, you did mention that it's a present moment. I was told the same thing, that your present moment is the only thing that matters, and it's the only thing that you actually have in life, because you know, future doesn't exist yet, past is already gone. And what they told me, that you actually, the key to picking those different realms of a present moment is actually your emotion. So your emotional state actually is the driver behind which direction your life goes into. And they said with your emotion, you will be able to not only attract that which you want, but you'll be able to steer your life in a given direction. And they always say that's the reason why we always want you to stay in higher vibrational frequency. That's why we show you those synchronicities, because they said it's it's calling for you to keep the higher vibrational frequency state. And they said it's because in higher vibrational frequency you allow yourself not only to go in the direction you want to go, but also it allows you to consciously make choices and knowing that you're making choices. So it's not only getting what you want, but it's also being aware of what you're doing. And it's exactly what you said. I didn't have that part of the message, and it's very true, because as soon as I heard you talking about the present moment, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly the same what they told me. But they didn't talk about law of attraction back then. They're talking actually about being happy. And it's funny you mentioned the sensory deprivation tanks, because they actually showed me one of my visions that I don't know what it was, whether it was my body or my consciousness was suspended in one of those tanks, as if you were in Matrix and you were closed in one of those tanks. And they said the synchronicity is actually us banging on the walls of this tank, making sure that you're happy, that you're in high vibrational frequency, and that you actually enjoy life, because that's how we can contact you. That's how you can choose the path. It's basically everything connects. Every time you say something, it's basically the same message I got, but from a different angle.
So, it's amazing just how consistent these messages are. Like I met a person out in the pub the other day, and I was just hanging out with my friend and his like literally his rapper. Like there were friends who were rappers, and I just started talking to one of the guys, and he asked me if I had any stories. I was like, look, man, the most interesting stories I have, like, they relate to psychedelics. And he's like, oh, that's cool, man. Like, I love psychedelics. I was like, all right, well, have you heard of Machine Elves before? And he's like, yeah, man, I'm in touch with them. I was like, really? I was like, what are I was like, what are these beings to you? And he's like, they are the beings that organize the universe. And we started talking about the multiverse, and all of the things he was in touch with was consistent with mine, other than the fact that he seemed to also meet dark Machine Elves, which at that point had never happened to me. Which is something I wanted to talk to you about. It's funny what you were saying about the synchronicities being us bumping against the wall. I totally agree. I think it's like a little reminder to us when we get lost in this game that we're in, and we start taking it all so seriously, and we start suffering because we're taking it so seriously. It's like, hey, look, here's a little thing that should be impossible for you to experience, but it's not, because this is a simulation, or this is a game, or this is something like that. And so it's trying to wake us up to the truth of our reality, trying to get us in touch with our happier selves. this whole, I made the video about the law of attraction, but then I made a follow-up video basically saying that the law of attraction to me is almost a misleading phrasing, because I think this outside world of ours is totally, in the most literal sense, a reflection of us. And so, like, I came to this conclusion because when I took the high dose of LSD that made me see the Machine Elves for the first time, I started seeing people around me stripping naked and holding up signs saying, "Congratulations, you've learned the secret," and like things like that, which I was like, well, I shouldn't be seeing this. Like this, this is just bonkers.
No, I got the same thing. But for me, the contact that I have with them is more, it's more ordered. So I know that they use different visuals to convey the messages to people. They've told me this. But for me, they literally tell me, like, congratulations on getting on your path. That's what they said when I started 434. So again, it's the same message. They told me, like, congratulations, you on your path now, and you discovered what your path is, and now you're doing it. And you were shown this in the same way, but they used a visual instead.
Well, in this sense, it was like, because after this first LSD trip, it started becoming very introspective experiences. But this one was quite literally my neighbors, like in real life, stripping naked and holding signs. Like, because I thought I was looking at real life, and then when this happened, I was like, this can't be real, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then I came to the conclusion that my mind was so like, it was so in touch with this other reality, that the reality I was in was changing to match where my mind was at. And I think that's going on frequently. Wherever our headspace is at, our outside world is reflecting that. And so we can try and convince ourselves sometimes, I'm really sad or I'm really happy, but your outside world reflects the true part of you. Any other people, like I noticed this when I started pursuing what I really love. I started telling people about it. People started sharing their doubts and saying, look, just be careful. Don't go after your dreams, more or less, because you could fail. And then when I stopped doing it and just became inactive, everyone was like, why are you inactive? Go pursue your dreams.
Hold on. Someone told you don't go after your dreams because you could fail?
Not in those words, but more or less. Basically trying to, it was actually, I don't want to say who it was, but I was telling this person what I wanted to do, what I really loved, and they were saying, there's no money in that. You should look at counseling or something like that, because that seems to be something.
That's a really bad friend. Don't listen to that.
So, but when I changed my perspective, when I became inactive and stopped, pursuing the things I loved, then the words I was hearing from other people became totally the opposite of this. So what I think the outside world was voicing was my subconscious. And so, it was like my subconscious doubt or my subconscious desires. And so that's what I think this outside world is a reflection of us. And that's how this law of attraction kind of works. In my best trips, it's always this wonderful feeling of like, all you have to do is focus on how you feel. That's all that is really important. Just focus on what you love. Focus on feeling good and true and pure. And your outside world will fit that and match that. Stop thinking in the egoic way. Stop thinking about trying to achieve these material goods, because you're actually matching a totally different frequency to what you want. Focus on yourself, focus on your emotions, and the outside world will reflect that. That seems to be a big message of the Machine Elves as well.
It's exactly the same message. And I made videos about simulation, and I made videos about emotions, and they told me exactly the same thing. They said your emotions create your reality. Very early on, they showed me that they're not really too happy for me to talk about this. There's one message that I'll probably never reveal because it's very profound. They showed me something in this reality. It wasn't a mushroom trip. They actually showed me something here about that this reality is a simulation, but I'm not supposed to talk about this. But they've told me many times that this is a simulation and you create it with your emotions. We're helping you create this reality with your higher self, and your physical form in this reality is just an expression of what it is that you're supposed to achieve here. And also it's a training ground simulation, so it's basically just you going through life lessons. And they told me that I failed so far, a lot of them. and that I'm still trying. So we know it's a simulation, but at the same time, they always say do not concentrate on this being a simulation because it defies its purpose. They say if you're playing a video game, you're not supposed to, complain about the screen resolution. You're not supposed to concentrate on the code that is behind the player's movement. You're supposed to enjoy it. You're supposed to complete it. And it's the same with our simulation. Like, people always say, oh, if it's a simulation, that means we don't have free will and that kind of stuff. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It really, it's not important. What's important is for you to go through those lessons, even if they're simulated, and learn from them, because the lessons are real. What you get out of this, even if it's a simulation, you get the perfect experience that is required for your higher self to experience. And I talked about this already, but I always see this episode of Rick and Morty where Morty puts on this simulation helmet and he has a life of like 70 years and he sells carpets. I'm not sure if you've seen it. But it shows exactly what simulation here is in the best possible way. It's because it's very likely that it's the same for us. We're just energy beings who put on those helmets or go into isolation tanks, and we experience this physical reality without having any memory of our true selves, so that we can learn from it. It's like a training simulation, but we take it too serious, or we're too lazy and we fail those tests. So I always say, even if you know it's a simulation, because some of us do know, a lot of us get the same messages through different channels, and people concentrate too much on this simulation, and then they just become, they said to me, Machine Elves said that the risk of you knowing what you know is that you risk running into a situation where you realize that nothing's real and nothing makes sense. Because if it's a simulation, then what's the point of trying? And they said, you need to remember that it doesn't matter. What you need to do is you need to go through life, enjoying it to the full and getting as much out of it as possible.
It's funny, this nihilistic take on this fact is something that does come up a lot. If this is a simulation, why does anything matter? Why do I do anything? And it's like, because, well, if you're playing a video game, are you going to just like have your character sit on the couch, smoke weed all day and watch porn? It's like, that's a pretty boring experience of a video game. It's like, you're going to go out there. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're going to go out there and you're going to do whatever you want. You're going to have the most fun ever. It's like, if this is a simulation, then it's all the more reason for us to have as much fun as we can.
Exactly. I always say, don't treat life too seriously if it's a simulation, because it doesn't really matter that much.
That's why these experiences are like waking up in becoming lucid in a dream or something like that. All of a sudden, in a dream, you're getting chased by monsters. And then you become lucid and they just stop chasing you. Your fear and all these emotions that you're previously engaged with just totally subside, and then you go around, you kiss the prettiest girl around you in your dream, and you do things like that.
And it's the risk, you're running the risk of actually interfering with the actual simulation, because once you become aware of what's going on, and that's the problem that I have. Once I started seeing that it's not really, that this physical reality is not really real, that became like, it started creating like disturbance in this simulation. I started seeing things that make no sense, and that started worrying me, because I was thinking that my simulation is falling apart. And the thing I don't want to talk about is actually a proof of that, and it really scared me, because the thing that happened was really scary, and it showed me that it is a simulation, but at the same time, it shook my belief in everything, and the Machine Elves were right. They always predict the future, by the way. They always say something that becomes reality, and they said, be very careful with what you wish for and what you do, because if you concentrate too much on this, you can actually, they actually said not to go behind the curtain. They said, I've discovered something, how this reality works, and they said, now that you know this, you're in a very, very difficult situation, because you can actually stop believing in this reality and you stop respecting it. And it happened. I went through a few days where I didn't know what to do with this, what I found out, and I decided I'm gonna stop. I'm not gonna concentrate on. I'm gonna go on with my life and do everything that I need to do here, because it's pointless. You're not supposed to concentrate on what you know, because then it distracts you from completing your tasks here. And I believe that we have tasks. We have a purpose that we decide to have before we come here. Our higher self does it, and I was actually shown that's how life happens, how it works. I always mention the Adjustment Bureau, the movie. I'm not sure.
Yes.
I
Oh,
love
yeah,
it.
totally.
It exactly
Yeah.
explains how life works. It's not about, Machine Elves, but it shows exactly how it works. It's a funny Hollywood movie, but I really, really like it. I also wanted to ask you, do you have any examples of Machine Elves interacting with you in this reality, not in psychedelic states?
Oh, I see. It's hard to say because the way Machine Elves seem to communicate with me when I'm not on psychedelics, when I'm not directly seeing them, like not having a sensory experience of them, is by communicating through the environment. It's like, you'll be thinking thoughts, and then all of a sudden the radio will kind of act as a synchronicity, and it'll kind of reply to exactly what you're thinking, or like a question you had, and then you'll meet somebody who you just kind of were thinking about, and they will be that perfect answer. But not really. I guess not really more than that. What about yourself?
Well, that's one of the things that's one thing that happened to me that I cannot talk about. It was scary because I could write a book about this. The other thing was that I actually meditated once, and the whole world became energy, and that was so scary because it was before my psychedelic experiences, was about 10 years ago, and I couldn't switch it off. It lasted for a minute, and it was at night in my room, and my room became energy. It was no longer physical walls and items, it was just energy, like in Matrix. And I was so petrified because I thought that I started panicking because I thought I cannot switch it off and then I'm gone or something happened to me. It went away after a while, but I started getting really scary of meditating after that. I didn't want to meditate anymore. And I started recently doing it again because it was I really started panicking because it was the first time that I actually didn't have grasp on reality, and something happened that I didn't understand. So that was that. That was when I started thinking about
You're teasing me so much with this thing.
Yeah. It's because you know why? Because if I talk about this and I tell people will start doing the same thing. You can hack this reality. That's the problem. There are things you can do there are little hacks that you can use to change this reality, and things like magic and there are dark entities. There's a whole world of things that people shouldn't know about. They should know about this, but yeah, it's if it goes in the wrong hands, that's scary. That there are things that people shouldn't know about, and also, like you said, you never had any experience with negative, like dark entities. I did, and this is something that can really be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. That's why I always say to people, be very careful how much you take of any substance, because once one of those entities drags you into their dimension, or they take over your reality, then you could be in hell. And it happened to me once. It happened to me on a heroic dose of mushrooms, and I was stuck in 2 hours. I was stuck in 1 minute. I think it was 6 p.m. I couldn't get out of this. It was a problem with time continuum. I know that we all get this sense of time distortion, but it wasn't that. I was stuck in that minute for something that felt like days, and I wasn't myself when I was stuck there. I was stuck in hell for that amount of time. And it's funny because they made the movie Inception, which actually talks about this, and I believe whoever made it must have had some psychedelic experiences. So yeah, that's something that people should be careful with. It's important to look for those signs, and those. I also want to make a video about this. People shouldn't ignore those signs they get, like synchronicities, that kind of stuff. Like you mentioned this car situation. You see Led Zeppelin. For me, it was very similar because I was in a car with someone, and I said, they were saying like, why you never listen to radio? I said, they never play what I want to hear. Like, why doesn't they play Nirvana? I mean, all the bands, Nirvana again. And I turn on the radio and there's I don't know, I think it was Polly or something like that, or Smells Like Teen Spirit. What are the odds of this actually? Not only did I never hear, I mean, hadn't had the experience of hearing Nirvana on the radio, because they hardly ever play it now. But also, out of all the bands, they suddenly that given moment, and it's Nirvana on the radio, and it happens to me all the time. So I believe those are I don't believe, I was told that they basically tell us to wake up. They tell us to change the frequency. Like very often, I noticed with Synchronicities, 434 appears because they want to warn me about something. And this is my latest discovery. It's been only a few months that I noticed that. Like, one of the things that I like about psychedelics is that this knowledge grows. I have a book, I call it a magic book of Machine Elves, because every time I get a new message from Machine Elves, it completes the rest of the message that's already in this book. This book has 50 pages now, and it's basically just all the information. All the 434 videos are based on that book. But every time I trip and I get new messages, it completes the rest of the messages that I was being given in the last 4 years. So it grows, but it becomes bigger and it makes more sense. When I get a particular message, I go back to the book, I see that it changes the older messages. And it's really interesting the way it works, because that's also the proof that everything they tell us is true, and also that they're real, because there's nothing contradicted in those messages. Like, there's no message you get after 3 years that contradicts the previous one 3 years ago. It always completes it. So that's also how I believe they interact with our reality. But the thing that what I want to say is what I noticed recently is that very often I'll see synchronicity numbers like 434, or recently for me it's 1111, and I'll go, oh, something's gonna happen. And I noticed recently it's all about frequency. Like, they tell me you need to watch your frequency, your vibrational frequency, because very often they show me a number and then I get it in a negative situation with someone, and like an argument, or someone cuts you off when you're driving, and then you get angry and it has consequences. Your anger then intensifies because you meet somebody else. And when I see this number, I'm like, oh, I gotta be careful, something's gonna happen. So I either become more positive or I try to raise my frequency. And then when I get into this conflict situation, I'm like, I already have the shield on. I already know what to watch for. And that's how I think they interact with our reality. At least that's what they told me and what they showed me.
Right. I mean, so like I can't personally relate to having a similar thing happen with number synchronicities. I get 1111 a lot. Like honestly, when it happens, there is such a little reaction. It's kind of like, there's the sunrise for the day. Like, I love seeing 1111, but it's an expected sight. So I don't think, if things do happen after seeing 1111, I don't really notice them. But yeah, I mean, that's I think they are trying to convey something with the synchronicities, and as you're saying, I think they're trying to wake us up to this consistent truth. Because just like you, the messages that I've directly received from the Machine Elves never contradict each other. It's ever growing, but it never contradicts itself. I have interpretations of these messages, which sometimes may contradict themselves. But the pure, true message from the Machine Elves is just, it's so wonderfully consistent. That's what these dark entities are trying to steer us away from. Because I never actually called them dark Machine Elves before, but I have had contact with one dark entity before. And it tried to trap me with what I believe was delusion. And so I was having a deep trip. I was meditating in my dark room on a high dose of a couple of substances. And basically I came to contact with this. Well, I just appeared in this red room, and this voice, which I thought was my own thought, said to me, "Do you want to see black magic?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, I don't know what black magic is. Just show me." And next thing I see this incredibly dark, powerful-looking black square just appear before my vision. And the voice then continued, and it was like, "Now that you've seen this black magic, you can never go to heaven." And at first I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what have I done?" And then I quickly just fell back and was like, no, I know what's going on here. You are a dark entity trying to trick me into having a bad trip.
Exactly.
And as soon as I came to that conclusion, I saw this entity manifest itself before me, this very dark, black-looking smoke, and it just kept trying to launch itself into me, trying to fill me with fear. And I just kept laughing at it. Like I was basically laughing at it and calling it weak, and then it just went away. And then it did threaten me. Then it said to me that basically I had to prepare because I was going to have a trip that would be as powerfully negative as my synthetic weed trips from back in the day. And after he said that, I had to stop meditating, and I was like, okay, you win. I'll chill. But up until that point, I was able to fall back because for me, anything that inflicts fear has always been related to delusion. Because fear is like a prediction of something to come. You know, if you're focusing on what is real right now, there is no fear present. There's nothing to be afraid of.
I had the same messages, yeah.
Yes, so it's always anticipation of something. It's that classic saying, false evidence appearing real. Exactly what fear is, yeah.
So I have a problem with this whole psychedelic revelations that we're discovering, these messages we're getting. On one hand, it's completely changed my life, made me a better person. At the same time, it opened the doors to a lot of things that I don't think an average person should know about. And I'm not sure if you've seen the movie Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's about those, the group of people that use magic spells and that kind of stuff. I recently found out that, I don't know if you're into politics, into the globalist and all those what people call conspiracy theories. They mainly truths. Conspiracy theories is just a term they use to hide the truth. But I heard that those in power, they actually use black magic. They actually know how to get energy from those dark dimensions. And I have a theory that the reason why YouTube started censoring us recently is because people became too knowledgeable and too powerful in this. And I get contacted by a lot of people who do magic, and they say, if you want me to, I can show you what it's about, I can tell you that it's real. And I always say, no, I don't want to, because if the people in power use it, and if they actually draw the energy, the dark energy, to their benefit, then it's definitely something I don't want to be a part of, and it scares me.
Right. Yeah, it's like, I think it's all related to this concept of delusion, because it's like the reason why we turn to these things like black magic or dark magic is because we want to receive these material gains in this outside world. Because there's no need for dark magic when you realize the truth, which is that you have everything you need. It's within you. You don't need dark magic to achieve happiness.
Exactly.
But a lot of people have fooled themselves, and they have given this reality some serious genuinity or something like that, where they think they need to have something in order to have the happiness they crave. And so they're literally willing to go against their own morals and turn to things like dark magic or whichever it is to achieve these material goods. Well, this is the voice of delusion. This is the voice where it's like, well, okay, if you can get someone to go against their morals or their own morality, then that person is going to inflict a negative karma on themselves, because then they're like, well, they subconsciously know they've done something wrong. And so just because it's probably because we've been raised with positive, negative reinforcement. So whenever we do something wrong, we're punished. So it's like, well, now that I've done something wrong, I have to punish myself. So it doesn't even if you were able to get the thing that you want, you will probably even be less happy. This is and this will be your negative karma, because you didn't deserve this thing. You only get a good night's sleep after a hard day's work because you feel like you've earned that sleep. So if you're turning to things like dark magic, it just defeats the whole point. You'll never achieve that happiness that you're turning to the dark magic for. So this is all inside the mind of the delusion. This is what it wants from us. It wants us to sell our soul. It doesn't want us to achieve the happiness that we can all achieve. It could be related to the YouTube monetization, because I think I heard that they were censoring us, because I've been demonetized now. My whole channel has been demonetized because Well, I assume it's because I talk about drugs, and a lot of advertisers on YouTube probably don't want to have their content sponsored on a channel that's talking about hardcore psychedelics, and so YouTube's started demonetizing, or has demonetized me. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, it deprives this message as well, this beautiful message that is beneath the surface of psychedelic use, and it's done so for the sake of money. And it's like, well, money is, again, part of this material delusion. I'm sure it has its purpose, and this is kind of like maybe a paranoid way of thinking, because it all serves a good purpose if you want it to, I guess. But it is frustrating. Like, it is frustrating to have a whole channel demonetized.
Well, I never really applied for monetization with 434 because I don't want to have anything to do with YouTube. If I could go somewhere else, I would. YouTube is still the biggest platform. BitChute is slowly becoming a thing at the moment, so it's getting bigger. I hope at some point we'll all migrate to, because it's not centralized. It's P2P, and it's something that I hope will become the future, because I don't like YouTube. I don't like what they're doing. But you see, I never monetized the channel, so I wasn't demonetized. But for me, they started censoring me in April, and my
censoring you? How so?
It's my channel started getting a lot of subscribers. I think the highest I ever got was 1,200 people a day. So if it wasn't for YouTube censoring me, I would be probably in 6 digits when it comes to subscribers now. I used to get something like 500,000 subscribers a day, and on, I think, 2nd of April, they changed the algorithms, and I went down to like 20 to 50 people a day, occasionally up to 100. Now they changed again after this Caubet thing. They've changed it again, and now I'm getting again about 100 subscribers a day. It's weird because it looks like I was put in the same category as the rest of the political stuff. I mean, it's all about the elections, 2020 elections. So I think they're trying to silence everybody who's they just want to make sure that people vote a certain way. But somehow I was included in that, and I don't know why. But they've just changed it again. So I think it's either, I don't want to be paranoid, maybe they're just censoring everybody. I've noticed that they gave a lot of attention. Like when you look for Machine Elves, you would get my channel back in the days. Now you get Comedy Central, you get Vice, because they all started talking about like trips and DMT ayahuasca. It's basically just money. They try to give the voice to mainstream media, which is funny because Vice it's about to go bankrupt. I think they've already downsized. I don't know what YouTube's doing. This woman, this CEO, I think she either has an agenda that we don't understand, or she's just delusional. I think it's just crazy what she's doing, because she's driving everyone away from YouTube. And I cannot wait to see the new YouTube Rewind, because people hate YouTube. The creators hate YouTube at the moment, and it's such a weird situation that we're on this platform that we don't agree with, and we don't like. And they use racism. They use like weird political stuff in their messages, and no one wants that. Like no one. It's the same with Hollywood. They all do the same thing. I just want to. I think I started talking about something else that I wanted to talk about. The other thing I wanted to mention was my idea of evil, this concept that I was given from Machine Elves, when they said that there is no real evil, it's just our human interpretation of it. And I found myself recently having a problem with this, because I made this video called Evil Explained, where I explained that evil is just human interpretation of something that's happening that we don't understand. But at the same time, once I started feeling like someone wants this dark entity to be introduced into the world, because if you follow like politics and what those globalist families are doing, you'll find out that they're basically trying to do the opposite of what is considered good in this reality, and it feels like they're trying to do something evil. And it's very difficult for me to know about Machine Elves saying that it's just a human concept, at the same time seeing all of this stuff happening in the world that is counterproductive, that is actually not good for our development. And I understand it's a simulation, I understand it's a training we're undergoing, but at the same time, I'm starting to think maybe in our human reality there is such a thing as evil. It's a very complex concept, and people always complain about this. People don't like me talking about this in terms of just a human experience, because I feel that's what it is. But at the same time, you cannot, like, I always give this example. If you find out one day that this here is hell, for example, you being sent here as a punishment, because life can be very difficult sometimes, and you're supposed to be tortured here by your feelings, your emotions, by your failures in life, and you just feel bad. And once you leave this reality, you realize that it's just bliss, nirvana, and everything's amazing. And then you compare those experiences and you say, oh my god, that was like a prison sentence. I spent 80 years in prison. That's what being on earth is. And then I'm saying, look at the murderers, people who free you from this prison. They kill you, and you go back to your reality where you're happy. Look how much this would change the concept of evil only if we knew that that's how it works. It's just that it's a theory. It's it's an abstract example.
No, I mean, I think what we're doing, like truth and evil, these are concepts that we are channeling from somewhere in the cosmos, and then we are assigning them to, or labeling them in outside reality. It's kind of, but like, I think evil and good, they're real, but what represents evil and what represents good can change, and it does change throughout time. So it's like, once upon a time, homosexuality was evil. Fast forward, and it's like, well, like there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But once upon a time, it represented evil for us. Evil is a thing. Like we can conceptualize evil. We can understand evil. We can feel evilness. Like it's something that seems to be out there in the cosmos. But we are assigning it things like to murderers. But it's like murderers themselves aren't evil. And that's where I go with it. It's like, I think evil and good, they're real, but the things that we assign them to are malleable and can change.
It's, again, the same thing. Like you mentioned that murderers are not evil themselves. Because I always, when I hear about this, like I hear about someone who committed crime, I'm always thinking, this used to be a child. And this used to be an innocent human being that was basically put in the wrong type of, well, not wrong, but the negative environment that was reinforced in their negative beliefs, and they're just suffering. One of the things the Machine Elves told me is aggression is cry for help. They said you're aggressive because you're hurt, you're hurting so much that you start acting out on it. You're starting acting on it. And again, it's a concept that you get a lot of criticism for once you start talking about this, but that's what it is. Humans are not evil. We're not born evil. We're not born murderers. We're born to be loving entities, and then somewhere along the way, something happens that breaks you. It just corrupts you, and then you become angry, and this anger leads you to I believe evil is just misunderstanding. You don't understand what life's about, because there's no payoff from evil. And even if there is, like, I don't know, monetary gain or whatever, it's short term, and it usually creates more problems than positive things in life.
It would just breed itself.
Exactly, it doesn't pay off. If you were to come here as an alien and they would tell you want to be evil or you want to be good, you look at the benefits, you look at the chart, left and right column, and you go, oh, this column makes more sense, I'll do good. Because that's what it is. You get more benefits from good. You actually accomplish more in life by being loving, and so I believe it's just I still believe evil is a concept, but I'm starting to see myself having a problem with this. Like, I'm starting to label things more as evil these days, and especially when I hear about those who try to introduce dark forces into our reality. This is, I'm not sure if you follow this, because there's this theory that those in power, they want to introduce Satan into, they actually want to do what Ghostbusters 2 was about, Zool. It's apparently that's what they're trying to do, because if you think about those entities being real, Machine Elves being real, then dark entities are also real, and I encountered them. I actually killed one of them, what I considered to be an evil entity, and then I was shown that there's no such thing as an evil entity. I was punished for that. I made a video about it. But
yeah, I watched that one.
Yeah, so it actually again reinforces this concept of machine elves, that evil is just human concept, but at the same time, being a human and seeing what's happening in the world at the moment, and just they openly talk about putting Satan in power, and I used to laugh at this. I used to think that these theories are just fairy tales, they're crazy, but now when I listen to this, I'm thinking, hold on, I know about positive entities, I know them, I contact them. What about those who decided to make a deal with evil entities? Maybe there is such a thing. Maybe it's true that they want to actually, they want evil to rule the world because they have a weird, skewed idea of life. And that's where I have a problem with this. So,
I think where attention goes, energy flows, and it's like if you see evil in the world, if you're able to do something about it, it's worth concentrating on, because it's an aspect of yourself that you can heal. That's what I believe. But I think a lot of people do focus on the evils in the outside world when there isn't anything that can be done about it. And this isn't something that I would say avoid or don't avoid, but it's something to be careful with, I think, because you can get lost in it. And you know what my belief is, so it's like, well, I think whatever our belief in reality is, that is what reality is. The only thing that's real is this moment right now, and everything else is just imagined concepts. And so, however we interpret these things, they tend to be that for us. Personally, I'm not really too involved with this sort of info. I'm not really aware of this stuff that's going on. And maybe I know my brother is, and maybe if I was to take like a mission of spiritual warfare, I would become aware of it. But I don't feel that's my path at the moment. And so, I'm not really aware of these things going on around us.
It's good not to pay attention to it, but sooner or later it will catch up with you. It will basically, you will, because I tried ignoring it, but at some point I realized that once they started, when I started realizing that they're censoring psychedelic messages, once I actually started being affected by this, I started seeing, like, once you start getting older and you see what's going on in politics and who's behind all of this, you start realizing that it affects you on so many levels. It affects your, your well-being, everything. So they always say that if you're not interested in politics, at some point the politics will start getting interested in you. And I believe that's what's happening, because you can ignore it only for so long until actually you realize that you are a victim of this whole thing. And then you will start, it starts from your you basically voting in getting people in power who are not trying to harm you, who are actually beneficial to your your little community, and then it goes higher to your country, and then at some point you realize that you have to fight for good, because you always need to protect your freedoms, and evil people want to take away your freedom. It's not something that you're given. It's not, it's, by the way, being free is a new thing. It's something that we didn't have. It's only been a few decades that we've been free. Before that, there were so many forms of slavery, financial slavery. It's been only a few decades that we've been really free. And again, I can see that they're trying to take it away from us. They're starting from censoring free speech. That's a thing now. They're trying to silence people who talk about psychedelics. I'm glad that this movement is growing, and that Canada, I think, is now about to legalize psychedelics nationwide. So that's a good. I think they've just done it for weed in the United States. So I see this awakening, but at the same time, the more we awaken and the more we push for being free and being good, the more the evil tries to take over our lives, and it becomes this struggle. And I think we're getting to a point where this will become an open conflict. Sooner or later, there will be a war between the forces of good and evil, and I think whether you like it or not, you will need to pick a side.
No, I agree. I think, as I said, I think the outside world is a reflection of us. And so if you're ignoring problems that come into your experience, you're ignoring a problem with yourself. And that always catches up with you. You know, we know this is the case. When you run away from your problems, of course they catch up with you, and they keep reoccurring over and over and over again until it is dealt with. And to deal with it, you tend to have to get dirty. You have to get gritty, and you have to fight it. You have to become amongst it to overcome it. In fact, that's what I think a big part of our whole spiritual mission is. The reason why we are light beings that are absorbed in this reality is that it's a form of cleansing. We've had to forget our true nature in order to become immersed with the darkness, so that we can, in fact, transmute some of this darkness back into light. It's just a game of whether or not you can remember the light or get lost in the darkness. No, I agree. There are things out there that we have to face, and unfortunately, you know, it is something that I've been affected by as well. My channel has also been censored quite heavily. I noticed when my channel began and they didn't know the content of my videos grew way faster. I mean, my first 3 videos were the fastest growing videos I had by far. And then when they realized what it was I was producing, the views just dropped like that, like nothing else, you know. And so it's obvious that there's a big censorship going on. At the same time, I'm grateful for the existence of YouTube, of course, because none of it would be possible without it. But it's just a shame. It is. Yeah, it is just a shame.
I'm thinking one day everything becomes legal, and I'm thinking like going back to the CEO of YouTube and say, look how much money you've wasted, even from a financial perspective, because all of us are starting to turn against YouTube. We're looking for alternatives, and I don't think you can repair the damage, because I really don't like YouTube now. It's a platform that's hostile to us, so we're not really happy about what they're doing. One more thing you just said about evil being here so that we can experience good, and I always remember this one thing someone told me, that there's no music without silence. And this was the concept that I really, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, and then I started thinking, like, yes, music exists as a combination of tones and silence between them. That's how you create notes. That's how you know, it's there's no music without silence. It's true. And I think it's the same with the evil and good concept. There's no good without evil, because if there's no evil, then you don't know what the difference is between these two. And Machine Elves actually showed me the same thing. They said, you're experiencing all those moments of struggle and hardship, because then you appreciate more what good actually, what good happens in your life. And it's like a compass. So bad things happen to put you on the right path and make you appreciate more of the stuff that's actually going on in your life. We've been talking for almost 70 minutes. Is there anything else you want to, because we went through a lot of things that was on our list. We talk more about, but there's a few more stuff I would like to talk to you about, but I don't want to make it too long. Anything else you would like to talk about now?
No, I mean, I think the conversation has been flowing pretty naturally. What I was most curious about was, what I wanted to come to you with was talking about the dark entities, because, as I said, I haven't personally experienced dark machine elves, other than that recent time when I came across those sexual machine elves. They weren't dark, but they very much reminded me of the sirens from Greek mythology, where they just wanted me to stay with them and just like have sexual experiences. For some reason I said no. Now I'm like, why the hell did I say no?
But one of those entities I met, she actually introduced herself as a goddess of the sexual world, but it was a feminine sexual world. So apparently I always say that every aspect of our reality has a counterpart in the machine elf world. And there's a god of weed, there's a god of sexuality in different forms. So I met this goddess of sex, but I said yes. She wanted to have sex with me. I said yes. It was the most incredible sexual experience of my life. You know, the biggest sexual organ is your brain, actually. It's physical. You generate those feelings in your brain, but it's not really physical. It's more about what goes on in your head and your feelings and everything like that. So she generated all of this for me so that she could teach me about female sexuality. Not only was it like one of the most educational moments of my life when it comes to sex, it changed a lot for me, but at the same time, it was the most amazing sexual experience of my life. It was something you cannot describe, you cannot compare it. I don't know what she did to me, but she engaged all my senses, and it wasn't even physical in any way. It was just her creating a sexual sensation in my head. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And it was a funny thing because I talked about this in my video, but she looked like a giant spider made of vaginas. It was so it was really scary. She, like this I call her she was a goddess. She was so scary, and she was like, no, don't worry, I'll show you. And then she started having sex, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. It had nothing to do with what it looks like. It's just absolutely amazing. So next time if you meet them, definitely say yes, because it's
well, I see. It's funny. The vibe was different because I before I saw these entities this time, well, these machine elves, I had a sober experience where I was meditating, and then I felt some sexual pleasure going on. And it was so funny, like the way my mind worked when I was in this deep state. I was like, okay, because I couldn't see anything. I could just feel the sexual pleasure. And I was like, okay, I'm just imagining an anti-gay fabric going over my body right now.
Anti-gay?
So, yeah, because I was like, for some reason, just not comfortable with that's like the idea of it being a masculine energy that was having sex with me.
Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So then I could give myself to it. But then as I gave myself to it, I remember I woke and I saw these like very like spongy, sharp looking entities that seemed to like be sucking my energy away. Not like sucking it away like a vampire, but just seemed to be like, I don't know, feeding off my energy or something like that. And these machine elves had that very same vibe. And it just didn't have that like totally positive essence to it, which I don't know, it just felt like some weird dark sexual energy, which I've never come
I know what it is. I on my heroic trip I had the same thing. Part of this nightmare was meeting the same entities because they try to mimic the behavior of good entities, and you will recognize them by the sense of something being off. Like you realize that, oh, it looks like a good entity, but something's not right. And if you don't listen to your intuition, you will soon learn that they pretend to be good entities, and they use like those good elements of contact. In this case, it's sexuality. They did the same thing to me. Me being naive and so again, a sexual experience. I followed them, and they took me to their dark dimension, and they raped me. And that was, that was such a scary experience because they're being raped is not in a physical sense, obviously, but they rape your energy and this is such a weird experience because it's really painful. Like everything hurts, like it's really bad, and they at the same time while they rape you, they take away your energy, and they harm you, and it's a nightmare. It was an ordeal. It lasted for a long time, and I think I escaped. No, I think they just used me and they just left me there. And I had to go back to this normal dimension. That was a really, really bad experience. So in the same way as you can have a very positive and beautiful sexual experience with those entities, if you encounter a trickster, like a bad entity, a negative entity, they can do something sexually to you in a very negative way. So I always say for people to be careful what they do, but you will sense that if you're in touch with your like inner intuition, everything that goes on when you listen to your intuition, you will see that something's not right. You will feel that something's off, and you will stay away from these. I've learned to recognize them, and also learned to defend myself. I was told that I'm actually very powerful. It's just that I have to understand my powers. And now that I know how to do this, I laugh at them now. So I'm quite, I would say, immune to those dark entities. But it's also important to stay in this state of sanity. That's why I made a video about your insanity, because it's very important for you to be in control. And when you take too much, whatever, LSD or mushrooms, you lose control of your body, because your body is so busy with the substance that it doesn't really give you much energy to control your mind. And that's why it's so easy to get into those dark dimensions, because they can easily take advantage of you because you don't control yourself anymore. That's why I always say, make sure you always take small doses so that you don't take too much and then you don't lose control. But yeah, I know exactly what you talk about. Again, it's the same thing. Everything you talk about, I've experienced myself. So I'm glad there's so many of us, because I get these messages all the time. People contact
it's
me,
crazy.
and they say, "Oh, the reason why I watch those channels like yours, mine, Shaman Oaks," they go, "It's because I finally understand what was going on, and I know that I'm not crazy."
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we continue making those videos, and that we basically help people by understanding themselves. So I'm happy that you do this, because I really enjoy listening to you. You have a very mature and very logical way of talking about stuff, and also I find a lot of the same information that I get in my trips. So that's really, really good, and I hope you'll continue, and I hope you'll not get discouraged from this YouTube censorship. I think it will change soon, because they have to change something, or they'll go bankrupt. There's no way they can keep doing this, because they're trying to push mainstream media on us, and no one wants to watch it. We actually went away to YouTube to get away from this mainstream media to get what we need from each other. And now they're trying to drag this mainstream nonsense again into YouTube. So people will leave again. You know, it's not that it's a different medium, it's just our mindset has changed. We don't really want that anymore.
Totally true. It's funny though, you know, I've treated it. It's actually really helped me out, this whole demonetization episode, because, you know, I have to admit I was actually getting lost in the matrix again. Like, you know, I don't make videos frequently, and like my first 3 videos I think were about 3 months apart from each other, but they were the fastest 3 growing videos that I made, and then all of a sudden, you know, I start, I'm able to make money from the channel, and I pick up a sponsor, and I like my sponsor, I support the goods and all that, but it's like my mindset just started changing, and I was still trying to channel true information, but I think for me, I prefer to take my time with things. And so when I got demonetized, it was a little reminder of like, hey, you're getting lost to this game. You're getting lost to concepts of your brain, trying to go, you know, trying to put too much pressure on this YouTube thing. It was like, just have fun with it. So it's done the exact opposite of discourage me anyway. It's got me back to my roots and got me wanting to make the videos that I was originally making.
Yeah, again, the same story with me. So when I, because I rely on my wonderful patrons, they support the whole thing through their generosity. And when I was making those videos, I would, when I was, you know, when everything was very popular and I was getting hundreds of thousands of views, I was like, okay, I'll just make a video about that, and then I'll talk about this. I didn't really pay much attention to what was going on, because people were donating anyway. And then at some point, I realized that I'm getting lazy. Well, not lazy, but just reckless with the way I talk about things. And Machine Elves told me off actually for that. They said it's becoming a source of financial gain, instead of this being a genuine thing about caring people. And I somewhat ignored this, and then a few weeks later I realized, oh, my views are being cut in not even half. I think I was getting like 20% of what I used to have viewership wise. And I was like, oh, now I need to not only pay attention, but I also need to make sure that I give something really important. Like I give people what they want to have, what they came here for. So I started paying attention to what I talk about, I started changing my messages, and I started making this actually worth their time. And it made me, I believe it made me a better, well, not medium, I don't like to use the word medium, but it made me a better video producer. I started making these videos for people, not only informational, but also I tried to make sure that they get motivated, they understand their lives better. And I believe this change, YouTube actually has helped me become a better person and a better whatever I am, you know, be a video producer or motivator. It helped me the same way as it helped you. So thank you, YouTube. You're good stuff with your censorship. That's actually good. Okay, listen, it was a really nice podcast. I really enjoyed talking to you. Anyone who wants to find me, I'm 434. And obviously you'll find me by typing in numbers 434 in YouTube. You should be able to get this. If not, put in 434 Machine Elves. You should get to me. I'm everywhere at the moment, and yeah, you'll find me on Instagram, Snapchat, Discord, everywhere. So yeah, thanks a lot, Jack. I hope we'll do this again. I'm talking to a lot of people because I'm building a network of people. I want all of us to connect. At some point, we'll start doing things together. Maybe I was thinking maybe we could start a separate platform just for spirituality. That would be a good idea.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I'm not good at yet technically, but we'll probably figure it out at some point. So I'm really happy that we have this chance to talk. So I want to wish you all the best for now. And
Thank you, my man.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you again for having me on as well.
My pleasure. Take care, buddy.
Wonderful. See you, man.